We're going to talk about packing equipment today, and then we are going to do some packing and learn how to tie hitches. So we're going to start with the equipment that we use when we're packing. Let's start with the saddles. A good pack pad is really important for the animal. It needs to be long enough that it covers the animal's side underneath the load if you're pannier packing, so that the box does not rub shoulders or hips. This is one type of pad, one type of pack pad. There are different kinds of pads. There's also a cool back pad that has Velcro on the ends so that you can pull the inserts out, and that way you can wash the cool back pad and keep it from getting all lumpy. If you've got this kind of cool back material, wool, of course, is the best, but wool is very expensive. And if you use cool back material, the thing is important is to keep them clean and to curry those things out so you don't get a lot of hair mats in them. And if you look at old cool back pads, you'll see that it's real clumpy in there. So keep your pads clean. It's a lot more comfortable on the animal's back. Then we have different kinds of pack saddles. This saddle here is a sawbuck saddle. These are called the crossbucks, and this is probably the first kind of saddle, the ones that the miners used way back when. And these are the bars on the saddle. Now this is a decker saddle here, or a combination decker, and this particular saddle is a flexible one. That's another type. Most of the deckers have bars on them like this, but there are all different shapes of bars because animals' backs are all different shapes. And the thing that's important, doesn't matter what kind of saddle you use, the thing that's very, very important is that these bars fit the animal's back. If the animal's back is round or it's more angular this way, and then you also have the length of the animal, whether they have an arch in their back like a horse does, or like a mule has a much flatter back. And if you've got a back that's shaped like this and you've got a saddle that's like this, you can see where the pressure points are going to be on the withers and back on the kidneys, and that's going to hurt and your animal's going to react to that. So the most important thing is having those bars fit your animal's back. Deckers were created in Montana, and they are more adjustable. There are more kinds of bars with deckers to fit different backs than there are with the sawbucks. And this particular saddle has flexible bars that Carol's going to try with her new saddle. Okay, so those are the saddles. There are two different kinds of packing. There's mandy packing, where we put out tarps and put our equipment in tarps, tie them up in a bundle, and hang them from the saddle. Or there is pannier packing, which is where you have some type of a container that you put your equipment in and hang it from the saddle and tie it on. This is one type of pannier here. These are rawhide type panniers. They're handy for packing things like grain or food because the mice and chipmunks and things can't get in or don't hopefully get into your food. Another type of container is like a canvas bag. These canvas bags are nice because you can put more things in a soft-sided container than you can in a hard-sided container, because you can push them down in. And if you've got something like, say, a cook stove that's too long to fit in something like that, you can squish this thing out and fit it in here, or you can lay this flat, take your straps out, and put your stove on top and strap around it, and still be able to hang it from the saddle. So this type of a bag here is more versatile than the plastic one. However, there are pros and cons and uses for both. They also come in aluminum and If you're in bear country, like up in Montana or those kinds of places where they have grizzlies, you have to have bear-proof panniers. And these are not bear-proof, they can get into them. Okay, so we've got our panniers. We put our load on our animal. We cover the load when you're pannier packing. Canvas is the old standby. You have to take care of canvas. If it gets wet and you don't take care of it, it'll mildew and rot. We use a trucker's tarp type tarp that is waterproof, and that keeps the things dry, or it keeps the dust out if it's hot and dry out. Also helps contain any kind of a top load that you have if it's not contained in something like this. Here is an example of a top pack. You can put your things in and then put that on top of the load, or you can just put your things on top like sleeping bags or whatever, cover them with a tarp and tie it with a hitch. We tie the hitches with a lash rope, and this lash rope you can see has a hook on the end, and I use 65 feet of rope on these. It seems like when you cut your rope, when it's stretched on the coil, it is stretched, and when you take that off, eventually it relaxes and it becomes shorter. That's my philosophy. I couldn't figure out why my ropes all kept getting shorter. So I now cut them 65 feet to start with, and then they'll back down and be a little bit shorter than that. But rope is real important. This type of a rope is good on your hands. It does not freeze, and it does not swell when it gets wet. Manila rope and cotton rope both swell when they're wet, and it makes it very difficult to take knots out. Poly Plus is one type of a rope with the red and white, and this one has the orange and white, and it's a real nice rope to work with. So we put our loads on and we tie everything to the animal with a lash rope in a hitch. When we get to camp and take care of our animals, of course the most important thing is where you camp with your animals, making sure that you have ground that will handle the stock impact. You don't camp right on the water. If possible, you camp on durable ground, not highlining out on the grass if possible. As far as highlines go, you need to contain your animals at night. Some people like to use an electric fence, and you can let your animals loose at night in an electric fence. We have, upon occasion, put up a highline inside an electric fence and highlined the horses and left the mules loose because they are dependent on the horses and wouldn't leave. If you put up a highline, you string it between two trees, and you want to get it up as high as you can so the animals can get under it without getting tangled up. 7 feet is good, but if you can't get it that high, they'll deal with it. We start out with something to protect the bark on a tree saver straps. There's this type of a tree saver strap that's got loops on both ends. It goes around the tree, and you tie your rope to this. If you don't have a tree saver strap, you can put your rope around the tree and put little twigs, little branches under it or something to help protect the bark. If you've got a great big tree with thick bark, you're probably not going to hurt the bark. But if you've got a little tree that's got thin bark and you don't have a tree saver strap, you might girdle the tree. Another type of tree saver strap has a slider buckle on it. This also has a loop on one end. Goes around the tree and through like this. And then you can pull on this and tighten your rope once you get it up. Another type that you can use is a ratchet system. This is like a trucker's ratchet that they use on trucks. And if you've got a long high line, these work pretty well because you can ratchet that thing up and get your high line nice and tight. Different things you can use for high lines. Here's a 1/2 inch rope that makes a good high line. This, anytime you're using nylon, type product like this, which is nice on your hands, it can stretch. So you'll have to tighten that up periodically. Another thing that we've started using that's extremely lightweight is this mule tape. It's real slippery, so you have to do some double half hitches and things on it when you're tying, but it doesn't weigh anything, and it's a pretty strong product. You can get that through power companies and places like that. On your high line, you can tie your animal directly to the high line rope with a prusik knot, which is like a rappeller's knot, or you can use some type of a clip that allows the animal to be tied to it and not slide up and down the rope. You want to keep your animals away from the trunk of the tree. You don't want them where they can get up and chew the bark of the tree, and you don't want them right next to the tree where they can dig the roots up, kind of like if tying to a tree, which is not desirable if possible for an extended time. So these are nice because they've got a swivel on them, and that helps the lead rope not get unwound. We tie our animals up at night, but when we get to camp, we let them graze. We try to camp in areas where there is grazing. And we use what we call grazing hobbles, which are hobbles with a chain in the middle so it allows them to walk. And that way they don't get to running like they do if you hobble them with a regular set of hobbles, which is closer together like this. Once they learn to hop with their hobbles, they can go just as fast with them as without them. But it's kind of a psychological thing. When they have these on, they tend to not do that. One thing I like about this style of hobble, most of them buckle this way. This particular style is the old style, and it goes through a ring and buckles back this way, so that the strain when they're walking or if they run is pulling against the leather on this ring rather than pulling against the tongue if it was here. If it's buckled like this and they pull, what's holding it is just the tongue here, and sometimes that'll rip. When it pulls against a whole surface like this with the whole surface of the leather, it's just a little more durable. Just a different style. So these are another example of standing hobbles. We use these on the animals when they're tied to the high line at night. Some animals get nervous and they dig holes, and we try not to do that. If they do, of course, we have to fill those back in and try to naturalize the area. But if you hobble your animals at night, that really helps them. Many times an animal pawing at night is because he either wants loose, he's hungry, or there's bugs or things like that that are bothering him, so we use bug spray. We also take salt with us. These are just some little pieces that are left. When the animals are working out there and sweating, they need salt, so don't forget to take salt. You can buy the little cubes of salt that helps them out. And then, of course, a curry comb and a brush for grooming your animals before and after riding or whatever. We also try to camp where there is grazing, but we take grain with us, some kind of a treat that we give the animals, and that makes them willing to come in and be tied up at night. And they know that that's home and they're going to get goodies. So we use a little bit of grain. They don't get a gob, but they get enough that's a treat. There are different kinds of nose bags that you can use that help keep from spilling or losing the grain. There are two types. There is the cavalry bag and the bucket type nose bag. We like these bags here because you can get more feed in them usually, and then you put them on and they can shake it down. They don't have to get their nose down on the ground and get the bag all muddy. The mesh material is nice because it's very light, and any dust that there might be in the feed can shake through these things, so they're not breathing all that dust as they're eating, and they dry out pretty quickly. If they were to get into the water for some reason with this on, they would not drown with this, where they might if they were enclosed in some type of a canvas bag. So that's our main equipment that we use, and from here we'll go and start working on the animals.